Star Wars Young Jedi Knights Delusions of Grandeur, Chapter 12. After his discussion with Boba Fett, Zeke plunged into the search for Born on Thol's brother. According to Jaina's recent hololetter, Tiger had been kidnapped by the assassin droid IG-88 during a battle in the lost city of Kuar. Jaina sent Zeke news-filled messages to reassure him of her friendship. Someday he intended to respond. When he felt confident enough in his new life that he could rise above the dark things he had done to her and the friends when he was part of the Shadow Academy. Zeke missed Jaina more than he could admit, even to himself, but he couldn't face her until he defined who he was. First, he had to make his name as a bounty hunter. At the moment, an important part of his quest was to find Tycho Thol. By tapping into galactic information databases, Zeke compiled a dossier of background information on Raynar's uncle. After the destruction of Alderaan, Bornan and Arnduro Thol had transformed their remaining family wealth into a profitable merchant fleet. Tycho, on the other hand, had invested his fortune in rebuilding the droid manufacturing facilities on Mechis 3. Next, Zeke revived Jaina's hololetters and quickly summed up the details. When his brother became a fugitive, Tycho had retreated briefly to the safety of the Boranian fleet and then joined Jaina, Jason, and her friends to search for clues on Kuar. In the ruins, the group ran afoul of IG-88 and his squad of assassin droids, and the other Thol had been abducted during the battle. Zeke found it astonishing that IG-88 had so far made no ransom demands. The assassin droids seemed to be waiting for Born-on Thol to reappear from hiding and ask for his brother's release. But Zeke alone knew that the wanted man had other plans. Zeke would have to find Tycho himself. He searched through the lightning rod's navigational files until he found a minor notation on the ancient world of Kuar, deep enough to help him plan his route. Kuar was a faint clue at the best, but at the moment he had no better leads. The ship launched into hyperspace. All civilization on the planet had turned to dust, leaving only skeletal cities poking out of craters and cliffsides. Archaeological evidence from long ago expeditions suggested this place had once served as a gladiatorial training ground for the fearsome Mandalorian warriors. Now only ruined cities remained, like scars gradually fading with time. It didn't take the sensors long to locate residual traces of the young Jedi Knights' encampment and the site of their fateful battle. At least now he had a place to start. He set the lightning rod down on the crater rim where Jaina and Jason, Tenel Ka, and Loe had begun exploring the ruins. Standing beside his ship, which kicked and hissed and clanked as it settled down on its landing pads, he stared down in the immense bowl-shaped crater. The ruins were older than even the Mandalorian conquest. Towering skyscrapers had fallen apart, leaving only girder superstructures that protruded from the floor of the crater and rose nearly to its rim. The crater's sheer walls were riddled with tunnels and catacombs, like worm-infested wood. He let his imagination wander. On the balcony seats below, spectators had once watched life and death struggles inside the arena. Zeke surveyed the crater, pondered his next step in order to search for any clues. He would need to find the exact site of the battle with the combat arachnids and the assassin droids. He armed himself with 2 blasters, knowing the catacombs might be still swarming with the ferocious spider monsters. Zeke wanted to make his inspection and get out before he attracted the attention of the arachnids. Keeping his weapons handy and his Jedi senses alert, Zeke followed ramps, crumbling stairs, and interlocking balconies down the crater wall. When he discovered scuffled footprints in the dust where his friends had walked, he did his best to retrace their steps. Perhaps in the aftermath of the battle, some clue had been left unnoticed by one of IG-88's droid henchmen. It was a slim chance, though, and he didn't hold out much hope. Zeke followed the trail until he came upon recent blaster scars. Zeke reconstructed the details of the battle from what he saw. IG-88 and its cohorts had pulverized part of the crater wall to get into the catacombs. Under attack, Jaina and Jason had fled downward, hauling Tenel Ka, Loe, and Tycho Thol after them. They had rushed into the dark passageway hoping to escape, but the assassin droids had found them anyway, and so had the combat arachnids. Zeke sniffed the metallic tang in the air, the mustiness, and the sharp odor of dust and the long-dried blood. Yes, this was the place. He listened intently for the tapping of jagged feet on stone, large bodies stirring, mandibles clacking, but the temples were filled with only sifting of dust, the whispers of shadows. He switched on the glow rod, keeping the light down low. Then he advanced deeper inside. Within the chamber he saw numerous dark tunnels in the cliffside, possibly the dark, dank layers of surviving combat arachnids. Zeke tried to keep his light from dancing inside the protective darkness of those passages. He was not afraid to fight, but he didn't want to. He thought he heard a sound. Pausing a mid-step, he waited to hear it repeated. A trickle of sweat crept down his back. Silence, punctuated by his own pounding heartbeat and the roar of his own breathing, he continued his inspection, trying to maintain his concentration. He didn't want to miss a thing. On the ceiling and the walls of the grotto, Zeke saw pitted impact points where energy bolts had struck. The floor itself was stained, discolored, tacky with dried ichor from the slaughtered creatures. Like discarded garbage, the torn and blasted remains of slain assassin droids were scattered everywhere. Durasteel arms, torsos, central processors, built-in weapon systems, and metallic skull heads lay where they had fallen. Either the combat arachnids had no interest in the spare parts, or they had intentionally left the fallen enemies to show their scorn. Must have been a titanic battle, Zeke muttered. He picked up the twisted remains of a tubular Durasteel torso from one of the powerful assassin droids. Such merciless killing machines were illegal and kept under high security even during Imperial days. He found it incredible to discover many here in one place. Zeke reached in, fiddled with the wreckage, and finally pulled out the central processing unit from the metal body core. He studied the serial number on the CPU, frowning deeply. This was not at all what he had expected. Zeke had assumed that IG-88, an old model semi-sentient assassin droid, had gathered a cadre of discontinued machines that were still deadly, still functional. In theory, at least, assassin droids had not been constructed for decades, not since the fall of the Empire. But this chip was new. The date-coded serial number designators suggested its programming was less than 2 months old. This assassin droid had been manufactured recently. Zeke held up the chip, shining its glow rod into its surface and to double-check its markings. Something was terribly wrong here. This was a mystery he had not anticipated. He heard a stirring noise, clear and definite this time. The cautiously approaching footsteps of a creature that had far too many legs. Zeke stood up straight, gripping the blaster in one hand and glow rod in the other. He dimmed the light even further when he heard the clicking noises and skittering footsteps from other catacombs, coming closer and louder. The combat arachnids were getting louder. Getting closer. They were alerted to his presence. They were nearby, so he had no doubt they intended to deal with another intruder swiftly and permanently. Grabbing the CPU chip and held the information he needed, as well as another deeper puzzle, he sprinted back out of the balconies into the hazy sunlight of Kuar. He didn't look behind him. His legs were strong and fit and carried him at full speed back to his ship. The combat arachnids could give chase if they wanted, but he sensed they would be cautious, at least for a short time, and he would get to safety first. He had left his light and loud rod prepped for a fast getaway. Sliding into the pilot seat, Zeke activated the repulsor lifts and raised his ship off the dusty rim of the crater, taking time to fasten his crash restraints only after he had reached the air. Then he cruised away at a leisurely pace to give himself some time to think. Zeke held the chip in his hand, contemplating the inexplicably recent serial number. He ran a data check on the number used in the lightning rod's computers. The results verified his suspicions, but raised more questions than were answered. The assassin droids that had accompanied IG-88 to kidnap Tycho Thol had been manufactured only a few weeks ago on Mechas 3 in Tycho Thol's own droid factory. As he reached the blackness of space, Zeke stared out the cascade of scars and decided he had no choice to follow the mystery where it led him. He was a bounty hunter, and he had an assignment to complete. He would go to Mechas 3. But first, he had one stop to make.